Well, I'm going for the... I don't even know what the do not disturb is. I'm like...
Aha!
Guess I'm not good.
And look, we have the stream monitor on the side now.
Oh, nice.
Oh.
Well, we have it in two places.
We do, well, we have the primary monitor, and then we have the actual, that's the actual live stream. So
Welcome to Tech Talk with the Justins.
Yeah. Again, this week, the third Justin bailed on us, so we very nearly didn't have the stuff set up right.
It's my wife's birthday.
Yeah, I don't want her to be mad at us. I'm just saying, I really don't want her to be mad at us. I'm okay with him missing for his wife's birthday.
The honorable thing.
It's
just
legitimate reason.
I'm having fun just messing with him a little bit. But.
Oh boy. So it's been a week.
It has been a good week. So this, by the way, is April 19th, and our topic today, which is going to do a lot of topics, is stripper poles at Christian men's conferences.
Yeah.
So we can get a lot of mileage out of this.
So,
or also known as everything that is wrong with consumer Christianity was on display.
Yeah, I found a new word for that while I was kind of looking into the event more.
Mm-hmm.
Populist. Hold on, I have to look up my notes. I was hoping to not have to reference my notes, but
Christian populism,
popularity gospel. It is apparently our modern day version of the prosperity gospel.
Explain the popularity gospel, because I think we're just launching in.
Basically, well, okay, so before we get too far in, this is Shut Up, Justin. I'm Justin B. This is Justin B. Justin M. has bailed on us for his wife's birthday. Note to men out there, that's probably a good idea. Ditch the podcast for your wife's birthday.
Yeah, ditch the podcast, not your wife.
That there.
Yeah.
You want to kick us off with prayer?
Thank you, Lord, for working technology and that you're always present in our lives. And just bless our conversation and the people listening, and do what you can to keep us on topic. Amen.
If anybody can, he can.
It's a tall order. God's like, is there something else?
Just gonna let you go. Just gonna let you go. The answer to that prayer is no.
Not gonna happen. Your problem.
So just to kind of touch on what, or kind of explain what we're talking about. So a pastor from James River Church, John Lindell, hosts a yearly Stronger Men Conference. Yeah. Stronger Men's Conference. It's interesting. I remember Promise Keepers and Creation and those kinds of events when I was younger. I don't know if they still do Creation anymore, do they? Is that still a thing?
I've never heard of it, so apparently didn't make it west.
I don't think so. I think it was more of an East Coast thing.
Okay.
Anyway, so these large worship focused, you have all the big names, speaker focused events. Well, the Lindells have taken that to a different level with speakers coming from the NFL, entertainment. Chuck Norris has made an appearance in a tank.
Not speaking.
Just
driving a tank over some cars. It was really spiritual.
I mean, I would totally go see that at a monster truck rally.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I haven't looked into it enough to really understand what the goals of it is, but if the people who speak, people like Liddell, Driscoll, Todd White, Bill Johnson,
they've been there too. I haven't looked into this far enough to.
Yeah.
You know who else? Lou Giglio.
Yes. Yep.
And I was like, Lou.
Yeah.
I liked your Lou.
So
what
actually,
doing at that
real quick
place?
on that one, I find him very, very interesting. because his response was similar to Francis Chan's response as to why you share a platform with some of these places or some of these other pastors.
You get a chance to
speak.
Well,
his comment was the same as Chan's. It was, well, I'm not hosting the thing, and they invited me, so why wouldn't I?
Yeah, you get a chance to spread your word.
And I don't hate that idea. I think you can do it. I think you can do it right, but I think if you do it right, you only go there once.
Because they'll never invite you back.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what happened this year? The opening act, I guess.
Yeah, sure. Act
was a sword swallower who danced around in front of a pole, ripped off his shirt, swallowed a sword, and then climbed up the pole.
Super impressive trick. I just have to throw it out there.
If it was at Cirque du Soleil, it would be amazing.
Yes, super impressive trick.
Guy apparently has a history of being a male stripper.
Yeah, that act goes well in strip clubs. So.
That is actually a thing that he does.
Mm-hmm.
This is at a men's conference, so there's some question of intent. And then after, I think it was the next day. Mark Driscoll of Mars Hill fame and infamy. More infamy.
Yep. Now of Trinity and Scottsdale, I think.
Yeah. Came out and basically spoke out against that whole act, calling it the Jezebel Spirit. Interestingly enough, he's been teaching on the Jezebel Spirit for a year.
Like his whole life.
Something like that.
Anyway,
yeah, the current sermon series.
Yes.
And Lindell is one of his, I guess, mentors or friends or something. Like they have a fairly close relationship. Lindell shoot him off the stage, basically, in the middle of him talking.
He said, "You're out of line.
You're out of line.
You're done."
Cited Matthew 18.
Yeah.
As
that's another topic we can get into.
We're gonna yes, because I think he's wrong. But
I have a lot to say about using Matthew 18.
So that's the basis for the start of this conversation. So we have a male stripper doing a sword dance in front of a pole, climbing said pole at a men's ministry conference, and we're being joined by, I think, my wife.
Not really, I'm going in the other room.
Oh, she's hiding in a different room. Prepping it for our eldest son's return, because he gets a new room now. Anyway, so thoughts?
I think there's a few subjects here.
Sure.
So the big one and the easy target is the guy doing the act, which was, in my mind, only barely worse than two men bare knuckle boxing that they've done, or Chuck Norris running over some cars in a tank, or they had another act planned for this one that was just equally egregious. It's just this showmanship stuff.
Yeah,
and I'm not.
So I don't think we can really talk about the act per se without addressing the entire conference. Sorry. Apparently, I'm allergic to bugs. Do you have a cat?
You know what? It was just your wife who came down here. I'm just
saying. I did it. No. I want to keep having this podcast.
The whole time this comes in.
So I think we have to. I think the act is just that was there. I think is a symptom of a larger problem. Consumerized Christianity, popularized Christianity, which cultural Christianity, as Richard Dawkins likes to.
So that
spout?
I don't
We're
know
not
if we're
touching
going
that
to be
right
able to
now.
get
We're
to
not
that
touching
today,
that right
now. But I think there's a big tie-in.
I think it is. I think it makes sense. So I think I would probably give. I don't know what else is going on in this guy's life. I don't know what else he does now. I don't know if that was just his past or whatever.
He made a statement about being a Christian and he was okay with it or something like that. But
sure.
I don't know what that means to him.
And even with that, right, it's not on him. He's not the one who put the thing together. He's one of the many players in the thing. He said yes, similar to a Chan or a Giglio. I haven't seen Giglio's reaction to this.
I haven't looked it up. Maybe he hasn't had one.
Maybe.
If he's smart and nobody asked him.
Would just avoid it.
Just pretend that he never had anything to do with it.
So this has now spawned a fight between Driscoll and...
Well, we haven't gotten to Driscoll's part yet.
Well, I touched on it.
Yeah. So Mark Driscoll gets up there and starts off his message, saying, "My voice is hoarse because I've been up since 1 a.m. praying about this, and I feel like we had, what did he say? He said that Jezebel spirit. Yeah, we started our conference with the Jezebel spirit and Asherah pole. So let's start with Mark. One, I hate to side with Mark on anything, but occasionally, since he actually opens the Bible on occasion,
unlike some of the other ones we've talked about,
will say things that I agree with, despite himself. But Asherah pole, I wonder if he would have said that if the opening act would have been raising a big American flag up on the stage in a prominent place, if that would have been his reaction.
Huh.
Yeah, it was the ambiguously gay guy that got him going on Asherah. But you can't just call it an Asherah pole because it's a pole.
Yeah, I wasn't.
But he emphasized that pretty hard. He emphasized high place and Asherah pole, which is
the platform
straight out of his sermon series and everything that's been going on with that.
So I think I can agree with him on the Jezebel spirit bit.
Oh, how fun!
Only because it's the seduction, it's the consumerism, the playing to your passions and the pleasure of things and being strong and all of that stuff, right? Using all of that terminology that we associate with men typically, but using all of that language and monster truck rally and Chuck Norris driving a tank into all of this stuff is that kind of, it's entertainment, it's pleasurable, it's enjoyable, it's all of those pieces. And it takes away from the message that they're driving at.
So I want to talk about
that one little piece. I think he's got a little bit of a leg to stand on. But that's not talking about the intent of why he said what he said either.
So one of the subjects that comes up then is since before people only who listen to Mark Driscoll, because he's been yammering on about the Jezebel spirit for a long time, and I have some personal theories about Mark, but there's a big question. I've seen this Jezebel spirit thing out there since at least the 90s.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
And is there a Jezebel spirit? Never seen that one named.
So I've gone back and forth on this today. I'm going strictly off of the intent of what he's talking about, not necessarily. I think he's crazy to call it that. You might actually be better off calling it, like the spirit of Babylon, because at least that's referenced in Revelation. Right?
Okay, I'll give you that.
I think you can tie the two together with, we're talking about.
Is the spirit of Babylon the Great Whore? Because that's exactly what that conference is.
Basically.
In my opinion. I think I'm accurately labeling that.
I think
the whole thing.
I would agree.
And his involvement.
I would agree. Well, he's a different thing altogether.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mars Hill. Just Mars Hill. Look up Mars Hill if you want an interesting read on a failed pastor honestly, we haven't gotten into the discernment stuff yet because we keep having other stuff to talk about before we do it. In my opinion, Driscoll falls squarely into false teacher category.
You know what's interesting?
Do we not disagree on this?
I was in a small group. We chose to go through his marriage series, Song of Solomon.
Okay,
it was actually pretty good.
Well, even the false person can get it right once in a while.
I'm just telling you, we watched the whole series, and there were a few places that were a little bit cringy, but most of it was really good.
so
that false teacher.
But that's why we still need to go through the discernment thing.
That was a long time before. That was before he fell, and before a lot of the stuff. It started getting out kind of who he was, and what was going on.
And I'm only talking about right now.
Yeah, but we also know things now that we didn't before. And before we're looking at him, and I'm like, and he's a compelling teacher. He's a good speaker, right?
He's a very animated, very charismatic.
Yeah,
very good speaker,
and he's very Bible sounding. It's kind of like my sciencey kind of thing.
Yeah,
it's sciencey. It's Bible-y.
So the challenge with this. So he comes out on stage and he says he's been praying since 1 a.m. It's like 10 or 11 or something in the morning. Mm-hmm. And he's praying for the men at the conference because they had the Jezebel spirit embodied in the first day. And apparently he had talked to Lindell.
I think there were almost 10 people who applauded him.
Yeah, there was a very hesitant applause or something.
Yeah.
And then there was then Lindell, the
host of the
conference, basically shoot him off the stage citing Matthew 18.
Yeah, well, his first thing was, "You're out of line, Mark."
Yeah.
And he looks around and he's like, "I can receive that."
And then he receives that, walks off stage, later on admits that he should have talked to Lindell first, but doesn't repent of what he said, which has now apparently created a rift between Lindell and Driscoll. You have thoughts on Matthew 18.
So Lindell gets up on the stage and he
gets booed off the stage.
Well, Lindell...
Yeah.
Did he get booed off the stage?
Oh, he got booed hard when he does this.
Oh, I didn't see that part of it.
Yeah.
So Lindell gets up on the stage and he is mad. Now I'm going to throw a caveat in here. This could all be a pro wrestling kind of setup.
So that was the thing that we were talking about.
They could have talked for that half hour that Lindell cites.
Yeah.
And made a plan to elevate their brand by creating a controversy. This is not a new thing. And he looked a little like the pro wrestlers standing in the thing, airing a beef on a microphone.
Yeah. It's also not necessarily a new thing for Driscoll, especially.
Oh, to create fake controversies?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even know somebody caught him intentionally doing that one with a friend?
Yeah.
So Mark was a little more humble and contrite in his approach.
Yeah.
Lindell came in just all fire.
And if he was truly believing that was a violation, if that was
then he would be coming in
the
all
righteous
fire.
fury would make sense.
Yeah. So and not playing it out. But I'm saying I'm just holding out the possibility. I'm not seeing anybody else saying this. I'm holding out the possibility
I've seen it said
this is planned
a couple of times.
Okay, then this might have been planned.
Yeah.
So Mike comes in and he says, "Look, he had a half hour to talk to me about this, and he should have come to me first. He should have Matthew 18'd it." So that opens up a whole nother level of abuse in the church, which is the Matthew 18 from the elders. And so I will throw this out there. If you ever go to an elder and they pull the Matthew 18 on you, don't bother with them. Just get out of the church. That's your sign that they don't want to talk to you and that they're going to manipulate you and gaslight you all day long. So Matthew 18, as Jesus describes it, is a very good thing to do if you're having a dispute with a brother. And
there's going to be some banging on the wall in there.
Yeah. And it is not a good thing to do with somebody who is abusing you. And how it gets used by toxic pastors like John Lindell and Mark Driscoll And I don't have any direct evidence that John's ever done this, but it's the pattern, and so I would be shocked if he hasn't. Is anybody who comes to you, they refuse to talk to you, and then when you go outside, then they tell you that they never talk to you about it, and then they Matthew 18 it and say they aren't going to hear your complaint. And it is a classic Christian pastor abuse tactic. So if you hear Matthew 18 in a pastoral context from a pastor to a parishioner, that is an abusive pastor. There is zero question.
So, just so that everybody knows what we're talking about, we're actually talking about Matthew 18:15 through 17.
Oh, yeah, we should bring the scripture out. That'd
be
good.
If your brother or sister sins, go and point out their fault, just between the two of you. If they listen to you, you have won them over. But if they will not listen, take one or two others along, so that every matter may be established by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. If they still refuse to listen, tell it to the church. And if they refuse to listen even to the church, treat them as you would a pagan or a tax collector. Ultimately, meaning cast them out of your body. So here's the thing, right? So if you have a problem with a pastor and you go up to them and try to talk to them about it, and they shoo you away, they don't engage you on it, and then you bring it up to 2 or more people and they don't engage you and they shoo you on it, and then you bring it up to the church and they cite Pastor Matthew 18, yeah, that's what he's talking about when he's saying that's an abusive pastor, right? So, because the thing is, you went, they didn't hear you. You brought 2 or 3, 1 or 2 others, they didn't hear you. Well, now you get to go before the entire church.
And in a truly abusive situation, there's no obligation at all to talk to your abuser first.
Depends on the situation. Well, because this is if you have a problem. Church-wise...
But there's a power differential. I'm not talking about problems. I'm talking about an abusive situation. Like, it's okay to go to a counselor.
Okay. Yeah.
Work this out.
Yeah,
there's some support, and then go and go and talk. It's not only okay; it's recommended.
Yeah, you should have.
And if they Matthew 18 you, that's their deal. You don't get to Matthew 18 somebody you raped, right? And it doesn't always go that badly.
Yeah.
But even if there's some really weird power dynamics or anything else going on.
So I would say in those, when you're talking about physical, sexual, emotional, like abuse, not abuse of their power, but abuse of an individual. Well, now you're talking a different set of circumstances that should really be handled a completely different way.
You should just go to the police, actually. You can't take it to the elders board because they're all his friends, and they're going to be like, oh, he wouldn't do that, and then you let the police get to that.
Yeah.
If it's a police matter. If it's an abuse of power, there's not much to do. That's like if your boss has abuse of power.
You can bring it before the board. If the board doesn't do anything about it, leave.
Yeah.
That's all you can do at that point. So that's the Matthew 18 piece. Now, the big question is, does Matthew 18 apply in this setting? So this is actually a really interesting conversation.
Very public sin if you're going to address it.
So who is... I'm going to make this even bigger. So you have a pastor who is predominantly on social media, and you have a problem with them. You have a problem with something they say. Everything they say is very, very public. Do you go to them directly with your problem? Or is it acceptable to make a video as a counter?
A response video.
A response video.
Before I answer that, I'm going to go direct to the situation. He wasn't addressing Lindell.
Yeah.
He was addressing the crowd. And he said, you guys sat here and watched this. You guys participated in it.
Mm-hmm.
It was wrong. This is something we all need to repent of. He was addressing the crowd. Lindell was part of that crowd, and he happened to make the decision or hired the person who made the decision. Lindell made it, for all I know. He didn't even know who was up there. I don't know.
Yeah.
Because sometimes people are really busy.
I think you're onto something with that. I think the idea that in this circumstance Lindell was the party in the wrong. No, every person who thought that was okay was who Mark Driscoll was calling out. Again, don't really like that I'm agreeing with Mark Driscoll, but a stopwatch is right twice a day.
Pains me.
So I think in a circumstance like that, especially, no, it's not a Matthew 18 issue. It's not a go before the elders or go before the one or two others or go to them personally. It's not, has nothing to do with that. You're dealing with an issue of completely different style of issue. It's the church itself. The body of the church in that case was actually the one in the wrong, not an individual.
But to hold out for a half an hour before in the green room, before stepping on the platform and then doing the sucker punch.
He did it wrong. Period.
Right?
Because
I'm conflicted. I could see myself doing that and justifying it. Right? Like, this message needs to be as public as the deal was, and I could also see myself saying, look, I'm going to talk to this guy and then I'm out. He can explain however he wants to why I'm not here.
What's more important, getting the message in front of the crowd or just the one person?
I don't know.
So my initial response of being it was wrong, because if he had said that to Lindell, based on Lindell's response,
he would have just
not
let him up on stage.
Making the assumption that it wasn't pre-planned.
That he was going to go up there and say, look, I'm going up there to say this.
Yeah. And then Lindell probably would have been like, no, you're not.
Yeah.
You're not going up there at all.
That's my microphone and you're not getting on it.
So I could see that happening. That statement. So I could see that not being a thing that he would want to do.
So he could also just step outside, make his own video.
But making a video...
Let the whole world know and walk away.
But making the video might not reach the people that he was intending on reaching. It's making the assumption that everybody there would also watch him.
Yeah. I mean, there is an effect of being gone, of not lending your name to it anymore. Like, I was going to speak at this conference, and I'm out. There's just... It's not going to happen. Yep. I talked to Lindell. He knows about it. I'm just letting you all know what's happening.
And that's fair.
I need to get ahead of this story. I'm not going to let him scare my name. This is why I did it, and I'm out.
And we are talking about a individual who has a very wide reach.
Yeah. And that is a legitimate response.
Yeah.
So I don't know that it's the legitimate response. I don't know what I would do in that situation.
It would have been less... controversial.
Yeah. I mean,
which is also one of the things that makes me think that some of this might have been planned or at least capitalized on.
I am a bit of a repressed table flipper, so intentionally repressed.
Repressed? I'm not sure I agree with that statement.
You haven't seen me. You should hear the things I don't say.
I was going to say, there's this game down at the Portland arcade.
That is table flipping,
and I am the master of it.
Did they have literal tables, or is it an arcade game?
Right? Nope, the actual table translates into the game with the force, the force of the flip, and changes your score.
So you can really send the table flying. I could practice my technique.
Uh-huh.
I don't literally want to go flip a table, although it'd be kind of.
It's a really fun game, though.
So I'm a repressed table flipper. I'm not nearly as much of a troll as I would like to be.
Oh boy!
But I see that side of it, and so the part of me that's more restrained has that other one as an option, and I would definitely. And that may be what he was up all night praying about.
Maybe.
Yep. Do I go out there? Because I think in a lot of ways he did. I never agree with much of anything Mark says, weirdly, or at least the popular stuff that gets out that's really popular, and especially recently. But he did the right thing, and I think in drawing the line.
And that's something that we can agree on. There is he was right in what he said. In the content of what he said was accurate. It's not a acceptable behavior for Christian men. That isn't. It's not especially not in that venue. When the focus is supposed to be God and becoming closer, you can just do it, honey. It's fine. getting closer to God and learning more about God and growing in your faith and getting to meet and network with other men of faith, like that's not really a great look for the church. It's not really a great thing to be participating in that context, right? And like I said, I don't know much about the act, the person who was doing the act in the first place, outside of that he claims to be a Christian and has some level of history with being a male stripper. But that's it. I don't know what his current job is. I don't know what he currently does.
That's true.
He's obviously very good at swallowing swords, so
and he's ripped.
So
we can tell because he ripped his shirt off and he showed us that he is ripped.
So that all being said, like Lindell should not have pulled a Matthew 18 on that. Like that's clear because Mark wasn't talking to Lindell. Mark was talking to the people who were there.
But he took it all personally.
But Lindell took it all personally. And I mean, to be fair, who wouldn't in that situation? Because you're talking about an event he planned
and
or had a hand
up
in
there just
hammering on it.
Yeah.
What else did you want to pull out? We might have cleared it.
Yeah. Oh, I'll just throw this in there as a short. A friend of mine, Shane Winnings, who is now the CEO of Promise Keepers, has made a promise himself that there will be no male strippers at the Promise Keepers event that he is throwing in Tulsa this summer. So there's that.
That's a blast from the past.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
I remember men from the church I grew up in going to Promise Keepers when I was like 8, 9, 10.
You know that the Politico that I was telling you about?
Yeah.
He ran the first Promise Keepers event outside of Denver, Colorado.
Oh, cool.
He convinced them to let him license, to give him the license.
Yep.
And he didn't get quite the same level of power of speakers that you normally get. And it was in a smaller stadium, but it was the first one outside of Colorado.
That's
it was
really
kind of a pioneering sort of deal. But, and I was at that one, volunteered at that show. I don't know, I think I was in junior high. It's been a while.
So we're going to pause for a moment. That's enough of a pause for Richard. And the next one, then, that you brought up. Actually, no, I really want to do I want to do the Iran one first. So,
and it may be all we get to. What do we got?
No, we're good.
We got a little bit of time.
We're good. We did that one in like 40 minutes.
This one is likely to be less spiritual. We'll see.
Yeah, this one's totally going to be less spiritual because I'm just amused. So Iran decides to get uppity with Israel, and instead of just doing their proxy war thing with Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis, they decided to launch 300 something pieces of ordnance at Israel. Only 2 of them hit. It's like 170 drones, 30 intercontinental ballistic missiles, and about another 100 rockets.
Would have done some real damage if they had all touched down.
Yeah.
Of course, they knew they weren't all going to touch down.
Yep. I don't think they realized how much they were going to fail.
I don't think they would have launched it if they had realized how much they were going to fail, because now everybody knows.
Israel and its allies, because it wasn't just Israel, and the list of
allies is a loose term, but they were at the moment.
Yes, because it's very interesting. Hold on.
They did not want an international conflict going on in their territory.
2. Yeah. 2 rockets made it through and damaged minor auxiliary structures on one of the Air Force bases in Israel.
Yeah.
That their F-35 Joint Strike Fighters are stationed at. No planes were damaged.
Yeah.
Like, okay, sorry, Iran.
So that's an interesting story.
You tried.
And it shouldn't have gone that well, but it did.
So, the number of foreign players in this little mini conflict,
pretty much everybody in the airspace,
was Jordan, Saudi, France, the UK.
How did the French and the Dutch get in on it?
They have
capabilities
anti-missile capabilities in the Mediterranean.
Okay.
And the U.S. Not only did the U.S. get involved, but the U.S. took care of basically everything that hadn't reached Israel's airspace, outside of the few things that Jordan hit, including an ICBM that was in space. We killed it in space from a naval vessel.
Interesting that we showed our hand like that. Is that a first?
Nope. Second time we've done it.
In real war?
It's the second time we've done it. It might be the first time in a real conflict.
I haven't heard of it before.
Yeah, I think it's the first time in a real conflict, which means we basically went, yeah, you know that thing you guys have been saying we can't do?
Because North Korea launches ICBMs over Japan all the time,
and we just
watch.
Yeah, we just watch them.
We're there. We
don't bother wasting the couple $100 million it costs to kill
I don't think it's that. I think it's, do you want to tip your hand?
That too,
right?
Although we've been saying we have
because everybody's radar was watching what happened and the capabilities going on, or at least the capabilities that were shown, and they might be greater, but that's an interesting thing. I didn't know that.
I just thought that was absolutely hilarious because Russia was posturing just before that about supporting Iran and supporting Hezbollah and Hamas and stuff, and they haven't really said much since.
So the alignment was interesting to me because Jordan hasn't necessarily, and Saudi Arabia have not been on Israel's side. They haven't been actively opposing them, but they haven't been actively
not super vocally. Although you know what they didn't kill outright during this whole thing, the Abraham Accords.
Yeah.
Those negotiations were still ongoing.
So what's being said publicly and what's being said privately are two different things. And that happens a lot in politics. You know, you see a lot of times even our presidents will go say stuff in a speech and nobody knows what they're saying. And everybody they're talking to
knows exactly
what they're saying. We're just not the ones that they're...
Yeah. So, just very interesting. And then Israel hits back in a very measured way.
Yeah, just to let them know they can, I think.
Like, we can touch it. And it gives Iran the ability to go, well, it didn't really happen. Iran knows that it happened, but the Iranian people don't need to know.
I think they're a little confused about what happened. I think there was another tipping of the hand of there's some capabilities that you didn't know about.
Yeah.
And now you do, and by the way, we can use them anytime we want.
Yeah.
So
I have two major concerns with this. Because if Iran decides not to back off after they just got hit back, and they decide to make good on their threats to make it worse the next time, because that's what they've said publicly. If Israel hits back, they're going to, the second round will be worse. Israel has a very interesting set of nuclear capabilities that nobody really understands, because they're pretty advanced in their nuclear program. They've had a lot of help from us.
They don't have a nuclear program.
Right. Sure. Uh-huh. Let's keep saying that. Right.
I don't know why. Is that even acknowledged now? For years it wasn't.
It's not publicly acknowledged by the Israelis.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. It is not denied either anymore.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I don't think that's been true since the 70s. But.
And technically, all intelligence sources point to Iran has nuclear capabilities.
They've had enough time.
And support from players that have it.
And they're not dumb. And neither are the North Koreans. And neither is Pakistan, who was given a lot of North Korean technology and stole a little bit of ours. And
so that conflict is getting interesting. I think it's going to keep going until November. And then, because the only reason why it's not over right now is because the U.S. has put its hand on the scale and told Israel to not do certain things, when Israel could end it tomorrow if they wanted to. Just go in and finish cleaning out Hamas and go, anybody touches me, you're dead. But
Yeah, they're definitely highly capable. They don't. I don't know. I don't see. Iran doesn't look good after what they just did. And with the hit back, it was just enough to show capability.
Yeah.
Like, we know exactly where your nuclear reactors are, and we can get to them anytime we want. And you don't even know how we did it.
Yep.
And maybe we have a few other tricks that we didn't use on this time, right?
Yeah.
So, I think there is we're not as strong as we, they tried the massive escalation.
Well, and even what they threw at them, right? 300 slow-moving drone bombers. Like, not 300, 170 slow-moving drones. I'm sorry. Anybody with one F-35 can take out, like, 8 of those things in one, like, before they even know they're in the same airspace.
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't make any sense.
But there's a lot of them, so you have to use a lot of ordnance to...
But that's, for them, for that, it's 170 pieces of ordnance. That's what they built the Iron Dome for.
Yeah.
Like, and then they have the U.S. sitting there going, oh, target practice.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you get to learn from every shot.
Like, it's why we build war games so we lose.
Yeah. Yes.
Let's put the F-22 inside of 16 miles with the freaking fuel tank on the bottom of the thing, and we still have a 14-to-1 kill ratio.
So what is interesting, the most interesting thing out of this, for me, was the instantaneous cooperation of Saudi Arabia and Jordan. They didn't blink.
Yeah, but it doesn't surprise me, because they've been working on the Abraham Accords the whole time.
It's not a huge surprise, but it's interesting. It's still inside the thing, and they have zero interest in Iran and Israel shooting at each other over their countries.
Nope.
And there's part of that, too.
Well, because Iran has to go through.
Yes. So does Israel.
Yeah.
They kind of have to go, it's around or through, and around is a long ways, and it makes it even worse.
And Syria is not all that much fun to go through anyway.
So,
it's interesting.
But I don't...
Excuse me.
We'll see if that plays through, that little newfound cooperation. I think it was a temporary. I think there's still some things that they have some...
I had a... We were talking about this, I think... A couple of my friends and I were talking about this the other day. Them actually making peace with Israel, coupled with the Catholic popes spending a whole bunch of time with other religious leaders in conferences, makes me think that something along the lines of a Christian, Muslim, or Catholic, more specifically, Catholic-Muslim merger occurs and takes both of them from just shy of 2 billion participants, whatever, members in each religion, to half the world. Because, one world religion is a thing that's going to happen at some point or another. And with Islam being the fastest growing one, it's definitely going to be one of the players.
I think there's...
Interesting conspiracy theory.
There's less distance between Islam and Christianity than one would expect.
Yeah. It's basically Muhammad.
Yeah. And it's not hard for Christians to talk to Muslims about Jesus right now.
Yeah.
At any time, anywhere. And even in... It's interesting when you hear stories of people who work in those areas, and you can just talk about Jesus with these people all day long. They love him.
Yeah. As a teacher.
Yep.
The jump is not far.
It's not a long way.
And, when you have two organized religious sects that have iron control over their doctrine and singular heads that can control changes to it.
I don't know how singular it is in the Muslim world. You'd have to get maybe the Ayatollahs.
There's a couple of factions.
The Ayatollahs control so much.
There's a couple of factions.
And I don't see them coming on board with this anytime soon.
Oh, they might if the Pope made some concessions. And the Pope can.
The Ayatollahs in Iran, bringing along northern Pakistan and most of Afghanistan with them.
Just make the leap that Muhammad, if the Pope publicly said that Christ and Muhammad were equal, because like you just said, they're not that far off. You're not reducing the claim of divinity on Christ. You're elevating Muhammad, which I have a problem with, but
what I see in my reaction was a bit visceral, but I see Muslims having the same reaction.
I don't think they would because they already respect Christ.
They respect Christ, but they don't put him on there's nothing on the same level as Muhammad.
No, but that concession from a leadership perspective, I would agree with you from.
But that would have to be a concession on the Muslim side. That Jesus
it would be a mutual
Muhammad.
concession, but that's less of a concession for them than it would be for us. The Catholic side doing that would be more of a concession.
It would be eye-opening. I don't see that, but it may just be opening up some diplomatic channels to where we can actually talk to each other and not fight with each other all the time. Like there is some common understanding.
Oh, I don't think that's a good. I don't think
we
that's a
have
good
common
thing.
Goals. So
because I don't think we have common goals, and that's what scares the crap out of me. Because the communication that's already been opened up between the different faith heads with the Pope specifically is quite concerning. Because he's
while I feel like he's going universalist. I don't know anything about any of this.
Yeah, I feel like that's the direction that he's
yeah.
Running. And that's well, I don't hold the Catholic Church in great esteem anyway.
Still a pretty substantial Christian organization.
It's still a pretty substantial Christian organization. There are enough people who are true Christians in the Catholic dogma that I don't want to see them hurt. And the Pope pushing everything towards a universalist structure is not going to be a good thing for that.
I wonder if there's as many Christians in the Catholic organization as there are in the American Evangelical organization right now. Because I feel like they've strayed in similar areas.
Oh, yes.
Some of the heresies are straight down the line the same, but...
and I think those numbers are abysmally small on both sides.
Yeah. I think it's a weird thing.
Yeah.
Because you have, and this is a little bit of an aside, but I'm seeing polling where you have evangelicals who are denying the virgin birth.
Yeah. That you can't.
But they're there. But they're there for the social,
which
portions
brings
of it,
us to our next topic.
And I didn't intentionally segue
nice little segue there.
I didn't even intentionally do that, but as soon as I said it, I'm like, oh, we landed there.
Nice job.
I'll just do a thank you, Holy Spirit, and I don't think it was, but but we landed there. So.
Yeah.
You want to do this one?
Richard Dawkins, world-renowned atheist and combater of Christian Orthodox anybody.
Yeah. Quite an intelligent man.
Very intelligent. Very, very intelligent.
If you read Richard Dawkins and you can counter his arguments, you're doing a good job. Because
did you see him and James White ever? Have you seen him and James White ever?
Mm-mm.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
That's a really good one. I know you probably don't agree with James White all that often, but it's a good one.
It would be interesting to see him debate somebody of equal intelligence. It would have been fun to watch him go up against somebody like a C.S. Lewis or something like that.
That would have been good.
Yeah.
So anyway, he claims the title of cultural Christian. And his commentary on it was, I like the traditions. I like Christmas. I like the hymns. I feel at home in and around Christians. But I don't want to submit to the faith.
He doesn't think any of it's true.
Correct.
It's just a set of, to him, it's a set of myths that have created a good result.
Yep. And it's very interesting because the only thing is he's not being held accountable to anything but himself. It's the only leap. That's the only change.
So.
He's almost there. He's almost there. Because 10 years ago, he never would have said that.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. It would be interesting if he converted someday. It's like, because I think there's a source for all of that.
Yeah.
There's this, that what Jesus brought was so radical
Mm-hmm.
that, he gets that.
Yeah.
But, why? Because it's counterintuitive. There's nothing, there's not a lot of self-centered reasons to do what Jesus asked you to do.
Nope. Not so much. The other thing that I find very interesting is a lot of Christian apologists actually cite some of his work on
I've been seeing that
the
recently.
veracity of Scripture. Because he basically goes, no, these are real docs. These are real documents. The only thing he doesn't believe is the resurrection. It's like, no, Christ was there. Christ existed. That was a thing. Like, dude, you're like right there. You're like right there.
Just one good talk with Jordan Peterson.
Well, that'll either break him or convert him. Because I'm not even sure Peterson knows which side of that line he's on.
Yeah.
He's also one who's had a very interesting journey.
That's an interesting video.
Yeah.
I think Peterson just doesn't understand redemption.
Yeah, I can see that.
I think he believes all the things. He's just not sure how it applies to him.
Yeah.
And he's trying to figure out how he can be good enough.
Yep.
Or believe enough.
Well, he also was pretty abused in Canada. It's Canada and all.
So, I think, honestly, I think he's probably already crossed that line over.
And doesn't really realize it.
So this is a little bit of a part of it, but salvation from the beginning of the Old Testament all the way through to the end, to Revelation, comes down to your loyalty to Yahweh.
Yep.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
It is the only defining thing. There's the only defining thread for every single person that you read who's attained that status. And the outlier, this is why this is true for me anyway. The outlier is a story in the Old Testament. I can't remember which prophet it was, Elijah or Elisha. We could look this up. There's a Syrian general with leprosy.
Yep.
And he's a big deal. He hangs out with the king in Syria, and he has a female servant who's Jewish, who's a Hebrew, and he has leprosy. And she's like, "Hey, I know this guy, and he works miracles, and he can take care of your leprosy. You should go to him." So he mounts up with his whole entourage and heads over and finds the prophet Elijah or Elisha. And I honestly cannot remember which one it was.
I think it's Elijah.
I think it is, but I can't remember. Isn't this horrible? So, but it could very easily be Elisha too, because he literally walked with the same mantle, both physically and figuratively. But gets to the hut, and the prophet won't even come out to see him. He just sends out a servant and says, "Go dip yourself in the Jordan 7 times, and your leprosy will be clear." And the general is all mad because his station hasn't been recognized, and the prophet won't go see him, and the Jordan River's muddy, and screw you people. So he starts to go off, and another one of his servants, and he isn't a bad guy because so far there's 2 servants who've given him advice, and he didn't kill him for the temerity of just speaking to him. So the other servant says, "Hey, how bad can it be? I mean, the guy only asked you to do one thing. Just go dunk yourself in the river. It's not that hard. Give it a shot. Got nothing to lose." And so he swallows his pride, dunks himself in the river, and his leprosy is cleared. And so he comes back, and there's a whole thing where he's trying to give a bunch of money to the prophet. And
it was Elisha.
It was Elisha. Okay.
You're wrong.
And gives a bunch of money to the prophet, Elisha. And Elisha's like, don't want any of it. You know, have a nice day. And in the middle of all of that, they have a conversation. And he's like, hey, I get it. Your God's the God. Like, he's the one. And I've been worshiping this other God. But the God that I worship is the God over my territory. I'm not quite sure what to do here. And so he ends up loading up a bunch of bags of dirt to take back with him. And it doesn't exactly explain what's going on there, but I think that the dirt was going to be like, Yahweh's the God of this dirt. I'm taking it with me. He'll be the God of this dirt wherever I pack this dirt. Now, Yahweh, I think, is a little more portable than that in real life, because the whole nation of Israel takes off to Babylon, and God's still the God of the Israelites when they're in Babylon, and they didn't haul dirt with them.
I feel like it was what that general could understand.
But he understood.
Yeah.
This is a boundary. Yahweh's on this side, and his God, I think his name was like Raymond or Ramon or something like that.
Yeah.
And so he says, I meet with my king, and I have to worship my king's God with my king. I have to at least act like I'm doing it. But I'm not going to worship my old God that's in control of this territory. I'm going to worship Yahweh. And Elisha says,
good to go.
You're good.
It's amazing
Follows
how much
none of the law. Doesn't know Jesus.
It's amazing how much. Well, so there's two things there, right?
It's all kinds of stuff not happening that everybody else has to do.
There's two pieces there that I find very, very interesting. For one, it shows just how much intent matters.
Yes.
For two, it shows just how much the law was for the Israelites.
Not for God.
And not for everybody else.
Yeah.
It was for
that
them.
Is interesting. And it wasn't for God either.
Correct.
It was just trying to help.
It was setting them up and setting them apart.
Yeah. Setting them up for success.
It was setting them up for Christ.
Yeah.
That's all it was setting them up for Christ. Because Christ had to come out of that people based on how God set things up after Adam and Eve sinned.
So, on that basis, just listening to Jordan Peterson, I don't walk with Jordan Peterson, I can't ask him any questions, but I saw the video where he, a lot of segments of him talking about his faith journey.
Yeah.
It looks like the intent is there, whether he understands it that way or not.
Mm-hmm.
And he's asking the same question that a Syrian general was asking.
Yep.
Is this good enough? And nobody's given him a satisfactory answer. Nobody's cured him of leprosy, so they probably don't have that authority in his life. So,
well, and I can't imagine anybody speaking authoritatively into Peterson's life.
I don't imagine anybody speaks authoritatively to Peterson. He will just wind it around to something or another and just move on because his mind is a maze.
Maybe Dennis Prager, maybe, could speak authoritatively. But Peterson also believes in Christ, and Prager doesn't.
Yeah.
So there's a disconnect there anyway. I was going to say Shapiro would be the other one, but again, Orthodox Jew versus...
But they really like hanging out with Christians.
They do. Well,
both of them.
Clavin, Walsh, until recently Owens. It's a whole thing.
Yeah, and I looked into that country preacher for a while, and I've forgotten about what I learned about it, so it was super important.
Basically irrelevant. Anyway,
yeah.
Daily Wire host Candace Owens left Daily Wire. The whole thing, there's not really a lot of information about it. They won't talk about it on either side, so there's probably some non-disclosure agreement there.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I don't think there's very many people who could speak into Peterson to help him with that.
Yeah.
Maybe Vodi Bakum. That might be the two of them ever cross paths.
He's such a stud.
Love his preaching. Preaching.
Dude is such a stud.
He's so good.
So he'll Jordan will arrive there on his own, and the Holy Spirit will get him there. I think he's sensitive enough to that. But he'll Jordan Peterson everything the Holy Spirit gives him.
Well, yeah, that's because he doesn't know how to do anything.
And look at it from 600 angles. And
all at the same time.
Examine it, all at the same time, and chew on it for a year and a half and then move on to the next thing, and that's it. And I get it. I intellectualize things, but not the way.
Not like he does.
Not the way Peterson does.
I kind of wish I had his brain at times.
No, and then you're glad you don't at other times?
Yep.
Because it's bad enough living in my head as it is.
Yeah. That's a thing. So, I think
we wrapped up all of our topics.
All but one. We had one more that we were going to do.
Are we going to? Are you even going to name it?
Yeah, whatever. What the heck. So, former President Trump.
Oh, yeah. We're back to the fun stuff. There'll be no spiritual content. If you're looking for spiritual content,
very little. Very little. There might be a little bit, but not a lot.
Looking for spiritual content.
So, no, this is completely political. So, he started his criminal trial for... This one was falsifying documents for paying off the porn star Stormy Daniels. Yeah. Literally, the entire case boils down to: did he account for it right in his books? Whole case boils down to that. A juror was dismissed this week.
It involves campaign funds, doesn't it?
But it's all accounting. It's all based on how they accounted for it.
Yeah.
Because if it was legal expenses, if that was an accurate accounting of it, then he's fine.
Yeah.
If it was not, then it is not fine.
So I feel like...
It's a cluster.
I feel like, one, the moral argument for Trump has always been weak.
No, there's no moral argument for Trump. There's no moral argument for Trump whatsoever. In there, yeah, that's fine. That's not a problem.
We'll see how it goes. We're to the really serious part anyway.
Yeah, we're all done the serious stuff right now.
Vacuum, you should be fine.
Yeah, we'll be all right. It's very quiet.
But I feel like the legal thing is right there along the Clinton impeachment, which they found something to make it stick on a moral problem.
So, to be fair,
definitely going to come.
To be fair,
but anyway,
he was obviously trying to hide it with how he went through and
it's the cover up that always gets you.
But the prosecution doesn't quite fit, because if it's election fraud, right? Yeah. If that's what it is, why is New York the one prosecuting it? Election fraud's federal.
The law office was in New York? I don't know.
It should be the Federal Election Commission.
They had a federal prosecutor looking into Trump on all kinds of stuff.
And they didn't bring any charges.
Yeah.
Like, this stuff has all been looked at already by a federal prosecutor, by a special counsel, and by the Federal Elections Commission.
So, did they just hand off their stuff and say, you guys want to spend the money on this case, it's your deal?
They didn't even do that. It was never referred to the DOJ. Nothing was referred to the Department of Justice for criminal prosecution. This is the district court in New York filing these charges.
So it'll be interesting to see how they do with the jury. I guess apparently they just selected them this afternoon.
Well, they had to reselect them. Because one of them got dismissed earlier in the week because they'd been doxxed.
Oh, yeah. I saw some of that doxing go out.
So, I don't know how you pick a jury for something like this. Because this is the first criminal prosecution of a president in our history. No other president has had to go
in the courtroom
with the president of the United States. How does a jury deal with that? How does a jury not know other stuff about the case from other sources because it's all over the place?
I honestly could be impartial on this jury. I despise Trump, but I could probably be impartial on any jury because that's how I roll.
But that's very rare for people.
Yeah.
Right? There's no way that they're going to find however many people they need to find that are actually going to be able to be impartial.
The issue with the juror being doxxed is interesting because I think there's what may end up coming out of this, because I think Trump acts like a mafia boss a lot of the time.
Oh, Yeah.
And and they're trying this. A lot of the stuff they're bringing against him, they're trying to do in a mafia. I mean, they haven't even done the. They haven't even gotten to the election stuff. Right. That's still.
But they can't. They can't touch that. No, it's not. None of that's pending anymore. They didn't bring charges.
So all the stuff they did, RICO, trying to bring it in a RICO way,
it's all gone.
It's all gone.
All gone. They literally threw spaghetti at the wall to see what would stick with certain judges in certain jurisdictions.
Yeah.
And the only one that brought charges was the DA Fannie Willis in New York and the judges that she had any kind of sway over.
So the grand jury in Georgia concluded with no.
They didn't press charge. They didn't bring.
They didn't do it.
They didn't bring fine. Not to my knowledge, anyway. Unless there's still something that hasn't been decided on.
I feel like that.
There was only like 50 some odd cases against him at one point or another.
I feel like the phone call that we have a recording of that's been made public is sufficient to prosecute him. But I just need 11,000 votes. Get me 11,000 votes. Just keep on counting until you get me 11,000 votes.
So, here's the thing. What crime is that? Is him saying that?
So, and that's why you have to bring in RICO prosecution type of stuff, because these mob bosses never do anything.
Well, yeah, but if nobody did it.
Direct.
But if nobody did it.
Then there's not a conspiracy.
He didn't win. So nothing happened. There's no conspiracy. There's nothing there.
There's nothing to prosecute.
Like, you can't have a murder without a body.
He would have. Well, you can't.
No, you can't.
You can't.
You still have.
You can have a murder of. You can prosecute anything you can convince a jury of.
No, because you can't bring the charges. If there's no charges, the grand jury won't allow it.
You can bring. But you can bring a. I think you can bring a murder case without a body.
You have to have blood, which means you have parts of the body.
Yeah.
No. You have parts of the body.
Right. Yeah. There was an interesting case in Idaho where they were literally digging up bone chips of this guy's wife out of his backyard.
Yeah, then that you can bring, but that's parts of the body.
But it was like a year before they brought charges, before they could prove that he was the one that put her through the chipper.
Oh, yeah.
He was living in the house while the archaeology team was out in his backyard, going to work.
They still had the body.
It was bizarre. They had the body, and they couldn't prove it. But anyway.
But that's my point. Like without,
hard.
And that was actually tons of people came out and said this with the other case that Trump was sentenced on, the fine, the $460 million fine, $500 million fine for a victimless crime that the only people who could have been a victim in the crime said that they did their own due diligence and undervalued the numbers anyway before giving him the money. And they got paid back.
Yeah, so they made money on the deal. He made money on the deal.
Like, literally the only reason that got prosecuted is because the district attorney decided to prosecute it, period.
Yeah.
Because there wasn't any harm. There was no harm. And our legal system was supposed to be predicated on actual harm. When you're talking about criminal, anyway.
Yeah. And I don't know how you... I mean, white-collar crime is a whole different thing. And it's really, really hard.
Well, no. Harm, like, money's missing. That's a problem.
Yeah.
Right? But the people that he could have grifted with the banks...
Yeah.
Got their money back and their interest. So they didn't... There was no harm. There's not even a claim of harm. It was just you overvalue. Like, he literally got charged for overvaluing his properties.
You know who else hasn't been actually prosecuted for anything?
Biden?
The Clintons.
And the Clintons.
So I bring that up to people all the time. They'll give me this. Hey, well, Hillary, she can't be guilty of anything. Nothing's ever been proven. I said, works for Trump. So I think they're both guilty. But
I saw this meme the other day. I thought it was absolutely hilarious. It had Biden, Obama, and Hillary, and Trump, and it was like Obama was "I spied on you," Hillary was "I lied to you," or no, "I investigated you." And Biden was, I prosecuted you. And Trump says, I told you. Like, that kind of hurts. That kind of hits. That hits a little hard. But they were after Trump from like the day he went down the escalator and announced he was running. There was something. He's being prosecuted for something the entire way through his presidency.
And I still see him as an extremely dangerous person.
Oh, I don't disagree in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
But
it's really hard to prove when you have good lawyers.
And it's the outcome of his presidency in general, pretty much right up until the end where the COVID stuff went wacky, was phenomenal for the country.
That's a hard argument to make, and I'm going to go totally Godwin's law on this one.
Hold on. So, when Biden took office, interest rates were at like 3.2, 3.3.
I bought my house at 3.
So
21.
So
two,
21.
so right around the time Biden took office.
So 2.9, like
yeah.
2.9.
Yeah.
Gas was at 1.99. We are approaching the end of Biden's term. Interest rates are at 7.5, and the consumer price index across the board is up 25% from the time he took office, and then.
But I think you're crediting Trump with a couple of things.
No, I am.
Because
but I'm also crediting
him with the inflation, too.
But I'm also crediting. I don't know if you can credit Trump with that.
I think you can.
No,
because most of the money that got pumped into the economy,
we can credit Congress with that.
Was under the Trump administration.
So, but the administration, the deficit and the inflation, I don't credit to either president, because that's all Congress.
Okay. The gasoline.
Gasoline is
it's a function of everybody being at their house. We weren't using any, so the price went down.
No, but it was pretty low through most of his. Like it was.
I
remember
a lot. I remember buying a lot of $4 a gallon gas while Trump was president.
I'd have to look through his whole presidency. It might be worth looking at.
Now, part of that, I was in a little bit of an inflated market, but it was around $4.50.
Where were you?
I was Western Washington, which
so here
they have some rules that make it. Make gasoline a little more expensive.
I don't remember under Trump being above $3 ever the whole time under Trump. The other piece is one of the things that kicked prices up was the Keystone Pipeline being shut down pretty much immediately on Biden taking office.
That did not touch gas prices. I can't believe you just said that.
No, because the plan for that fuel was not direct impact. I will admit it's not direct.
Zero impact on gasoline prices.
No, it would have kept them down.
None of that oil makes gasoline.
No,
not a drop of it makes gasoline.
It's not direct impact. Its use for other things means we don't have to use other fuel for elsewhere to make those same things and keep up with supply.
It was all shipped to Houston to make specialized products for export.
No, absolutely.
So it didn't. And the second thing is, and I can't believe you're saying this.
No, it does. No, it does that. It's the whole for oil
but
itself.
It's not. But it's not because you couldn't throw another feedstock in to replace it. They didn't grab other oil. That oil and those refineries are made for each other.
But the stuff that they were doing had to be pulled from elsewhere. Okay. The demand is the same globally.
But you're missing another thing. The supply didn't change. They didn't shut down the Keystone Pipeline. They shut down an auxiliary pipeline, which was going to make it a little bit cheaper to ship the oil. The original pipeline was still going. They shut down an auxiliary project.
I understand that.
There was no change in supply.
But it made it more expensive.
No, it didn't. It was...
You just said it was going to make it cheaper.
They hadn't finished the project. There was nothing shut down. They didn't shut down a single drop of oil or a single milliliter of capacity.
But they shut down the pipeline that would have made it cheaper.
Potential.
Which would have made it cheaper.
But it didn't add capacity.
I'm not disagreeing with that.
So
I'm saying that the cost, supply demand,
it didn't make it
didn't allow for an impact domestically,
which only goes to the corporate profit.
Not necessarily, because you're talking about barrels of oil, which are commodity trade.
But it isn't enough to move. That isn't enough to move the market. There's no way. If you don't change the supply, you cannot move the market.
If you can make the supply cheaper, if you can make the supply cheaper,
if you can make the supply cheaper, then you can continue to supply in a down market. That's the only thing that means. It doesn't do anything.
But it makes it cheaper too, because it can bring the base rate down.
Only in a deflationary cycle already.
Which we were in at the time.
If it costs you $35 a barrel to bring oil out of the ground and you can sell it for $36, you're making a profit.
Yeah.
If you're selling it for $34, you shut it down.
Yeah.
That's it. Or deliver it to market, actually. It's not just get it out of the ground.
And we're
deliver it to market.
Like 110 right now?
So if the Keystone oil was coming out of the ground at $30 a barrel and they could have saved and gone to $29 a barrel, it only matters if fuel goes below $29 a barrel. It doesn't cause anything to inflate. That's not how the market works. I can't believe you brought this up. It's the most easily disprovable thing in the world, and you're still on this.
Except you're missing the part that removing that capability means that your baseline is higher, which means it's not possible to move lower, which has impacts on the domestic market as a whole.
Only if the market gets down
and
that far.
It was going that way at the time.
But it wasn't there.
It was heading in that direction. Like you said, it wasn't done yet.
You keep on moving the goalposts.
I'm not moving the goalposts.
You totally are. You're like a reduced supply. It didn't reduce a thing.
No, sorry, I misspoke when I said that.
And the only thing the decrease of cost was doing, and the only thing it's ever done, and the only thing it could have done so far, is just put more money in the hands of the people who...
I mistakenly attributed our domestic production decrease to the Keystone Pipeline, and it wasn't. It was other things.
No, it was probably a decrease in the market, actually. And
going from a net producer to a net a net exporter to a net importer is
our cost of getting oil out of the ground. No, when I'm talking market, a lot of our shale oil is a little more expensive to get to than some other oils in the world. So there's a certain point where we stop exploring because it costs a lot of money to explore when the market goes down. That did happen for a little while.
But the barrel price went up. So you'd be making more money on it
when it goes up, yes. So but then it takes a couple of years for your exploration to catch up.
No, but how did we go when the numbers for oil, the barrel price for oil started going up after Biden took office? How did we not stay a net exporter of oil if the barrel price was going up? Because when Biden took office, we were a net exporter.
There's some things that happened, but here's the thing: it's
oil policy is all driven by the executive branch.
You're going for this Keystone thing, and
I'm not. I'm off the Keystone thing. I'm off the Keystone thing.
Your analysis from the news. What he also did was lock up a lot of public land from oil exploration.
Yeah, which
wasn't
a problem.
That was, but it wasn't Keystone.
I already said that. I already said I misallocated the cause of the net export becoming a net import.
And then there's international things where OPEC actually managed to get a little bit of a rein on supply, because they were struggling with that for a while. But they don't have as much influence as they used to.
No, because we end up getting most of our stuff from South America anyway.
Then we sanctioned Iran pretty hard and locked a bunch of oil out from there.
And they gave them a bunch of money. That was Trump that did that.
That was Trump. Venezuela's been sending less oil because
Venezuela hasn't been sending oil for like a decade. So that's neither of these presidents.
But that was locked out, and Russia.
We never got stuff from Russia, though. So our domestic import-export wouldn't be affected by that.
But the international market gets a lot from Russia. So if they don't get it from Russia, and there were some problems with Russian oil there for a while, too.
Yeah, but that's my point. Like, that's part of my point. We were a net exporter under Trump. For the first year of Biden, we were still a net exporter. Biden's policies kicked in. We became a net importer.
But not because of Keystone.
I agreed with you on that already.
I'm just driving the point. Anyway.
Yeah, you're right. Okay, so Keystone was not the cause of us shifting from a net exporter to a net importer.
I do think that
locking up federal lands, and
Biden was very intentional, quite intentional, about trying to make it harder to get oil. But I will also say that exploration pretty much stopped during the pandemic.
Yep,
and
that's fair.
Those effects take a little while to work themselves through the system. So you still got a bunch of producing oil wells. You're just not bringing the new ones online, and that does take a little while to work itself through the system. I think there's a combination, but he has been quite intentional.
Yeah.
About
I'm just making sure we get to that comment. There is he was very intentional about locking that out and locking that up.
But then he went after the strategic oil reserve when it.
Because that's smart.
Yeah.
In any way, shape, or form.
Draining it as fast as it could.
And then we unlocked Iran's ability to make oil and unlock their bank accounts.
Yeah, I think he was just trying
to
saying,
net good during Biden versus net good during Trump. Very different conversations.
I didn't say I was in love with Biden.
Trump might have been a horrible public speaker. Well, actually, he's a really good public speaker. He just has horrible rhetoric. Let's go with that, because he's actually pretty good at being effective. But his policy...
Some of his policy.
What was bad?
Some of his policies seem to be guided by the last expert he talked to.
Sure.
On his way out the door to give a press conference.
But what turned out in a negative? From policy perspective. I mean, reduction in regulation.
Huge win.
Big wins there.
Yeah.
Big wins there.
And that, I think, has been a large function of the Supreme Court, too. Everybody bags on the Supreme Court, but man, are they've
done great.
Slashing the ability of bureaucracies to create law.
Yeah.
Just butchering it, putting it all back on Congress.
Can't wait till they finally actually go after the ATF. There's like 3 cases that are supposed to be coming up.
That'd be nice. Well, make Congress do it, right? Instead of
do their job instead of making the executive branch.
Yeah. So the argument I will make, and I can agree with you on that. But I'm gonna go straight into Godwin's Law because it's a clear and shining example of somebody who really improved their country's economy.
You're going to have to explain.
Well, Godwin's Law says that any argument gone long enough will eventually wind up on Hitler. So I've been looking at knowingly and understanding that
you're such a tool.
And Pinochet, but if you don't want to do Hitler, and that's the obvious easy one, right? But Pinochet is another, just an absolute horrible human being who made a lot of really good economic reforms in his country.
I don't think that's a bad, because, in my opinion,
the guys who
our last 20 years, 30 years of presidents are almost all just as much of criminals as Trump is. They just haven't gotten prosecuted.
None of them took a run at insurrection.
I don't think Trump actually took a run at insurrection.
I think Trump took a run at insurrection.
What was he gonna? It was a really. If he was, he's really dumb, and I don't think he's really dumb.
The goal, I think, in listening to the staff members who were there with him, trying to tell him, look, dude, you actually lost this, and you need to let this go.
Oh, sure.
And between that and him being royally pissed off at Mike Pence for not trying to just literally just say it doesn't matter what the vote is, we're going to go this way in Senate. Trying to wholesale replace electors, the whole works, right? Trying to play with the Electoral College and just basically fall back on that.
To be fair, that is why we made the Electoral College in the first place.
It is, but it wasn't for the president to try to go in and manipulate it. He was trying to get states to just just fire their electors and send ones loyal to him, regardless of how the vote went.
But the ones that he could, based on their constitution. So yeah, no, I get the argument.
That's taking a run at insurrection. Let's be real. He's trying to overturn the will of the people. There's no question of this.
Was it actually the will of the people? None of the court stuff had been settled yet with all of that.
He won nothing.
There was 11 electoral votes difference. That's one state.
No, what I mean is court-wise, he won nothing.
Oh, no, I understand that. I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm talking about at the time, on January 6th, most of the stuff hadn't wrapped up.
The only people...
I think...
the only person who thought Trump won that was Trump. I mean, there were a few other people.
Oh, no. I thought Trump won that. I still think Trump won that. I don't think they cheated the way that he thought they cheated. But, because they've been playing a way longer game than that. But the numbers don't make any sense. The numbers from the districts, a lot of them don't make any sense.
See, we just explained the Keystone Pipeline in 5 minutes, so I'm not sure.
No, hold on. When you have districts that have more... when you have total turnout, significantly greater than any other presidential election in history, and one of the two candidates barely campaigned, and you didn't have anything to point to for Trump doing super bad at, he didn't handle anything particularly terribly during his presidency. If anything, you could say he was a mediocre president.
Is anybody making this argument for any of the Republicans that got elected in those districts to federal office?
I'm not talking about specific districts. I'm talking about total numbers.
Because
the states...
Because the only one we're arguing over is Trump.
Because of the numbers. No, it's a legitimate...
Don't count, but those don't count for any of the other people. Oh, these are the same districts that the Republicans
it's not because it's not about district.
I know.
No, it's not about
the same areas.
But no, it's not about district. Because the states aren't one district by district.
So there's only one there's only corruption in the Democrat side, not in the Republican side.
Oh no, I didn't say that.
Okay.
Never said that. Never in a million years would I say
there's
that.
There's only corruption when a Democrat is elected, because that's the only corruption being talked about.
That's
the only conspiracy is a Democrat getting elected. It's the only conspiracy from that election.
It's not that it's not that the Democrat got elected. It's how.
The only conspiracy from that election is a Democrat got elected.
How many people?
There's only one.
It underlines a problem. How many states have voter ID laws? How many states require you to prove citizenship before you vote?
There's pretty robust.
Have you ever done poll? Have you ever watched polls?
I voted at polls. I mean, I know what it takes.
They're not that robust in most states.
But when I go to vote, I don't go to vote at polls anymore. Mm-hmm. I always just do absentee because it's a lot easier. But
what does it take to check in?
They have to find your name on that registry.
Sure. You have to have registered ahead of time.
That's it.
Or you have to know a name that they're not validating that you are that name.
No.
You don't see that as a potential problem?
Not as big as you'd think it would be.
Why?
Because it would show up as a very real problem if somebody was voting in my name and then I went up to vote too.
If they used people who were likely voters. But I have an app that I can see the last time somebody at a certain house voted.
It wouldn't take long for there to be a problem.
How many
especially in an election that big.
How many new houses are there in the last... How many new residences have we built in between the last 2 elections?
What does that have to do with anything?
Because it's tied to your address. It's tied to a name. Those are the 2 factors that are for registration for voting, right? Your location and who you are. If there's 2% difference in those numbers from election to election, that's 2% new potentials.
They looked into that. It wasn't enough to do anything.
There's not enough to do anything. You can't prove it. No, you can't prove it.
You absolutely can prove it.
No, you couldn't.
If you see the same person with the same identifiers, they know who you are. It isn't just...
The people at the polls don't.
Make it off.
The people at the polls don't.
But it can be known if you're registered in 2 places.
Oh, no, if you're registered in 2 places, absolutely. That's not what I'm talking about.
Registered in 2 places.
No, that's not what I'm talking about.
They know.
But that's not what I'm talking about.
So it isn't the double registry.
I'm not talking about the double registry.
Okay.
I'm not even coming close to...
Spent a lot of time on that, and they fleshed it out pretty good.
So, we know that dead people have voted. We know
the
that.
dead vote's always been pretty strong in the Valley in Texas. They're a prime constituency.
We know that happens.
Yeah.
We also know that we created a completely new way to vote for everybody during COVID.
Nothing completely new about mail-in voting.
Except it was that everybody could mail-in vote without an excuse. In Maine, prior to COVID...
In Washington, it's the only way you can vote.
But in most states, Maine included, the only way that you could do a mail-in ballot is if you had a legitimate excuse for why you weren't going to be able to make it to the polls that day. Usually, military service, or you were going to be out of state for a legitimate reason. Otherwise, you couldn't get a mail-in ballot. And they mailed you one.
Yeah, and now you can get them. It's no problem. I get them all the time.
But that's
my preferred way to vote.
That is...
It's also a very secure...
Very big loophole.
But it's a pretty secure way of voting, too.
How is it a secure way of voting?
It's a very secure way of voting. We can pull up how they do it, but it's a secure way of voting. You walk through it, and you see all the checks and balances and the stuff they do. It's pretty good.
For the people who... Because they send you a mail-in ballot with your information on it. Right?
Yep.
They send that to you.
Yep.
So what if you don't vote? You specifically. What if you don't vote? Somebody takes your ballot and votes for you.
So there has been some of that. Most of it that has been proven was done by Republicans.
Before we had... the Democrats push a mail-in ballot to everybody and their brother.
I'm just saying.
Like
the proven instances
these
of that.
Things are already know.
Do you know of a proven case where there was Democrat vote harvesting? Because I know some for Republicans. I don't know any for Democrats.
We usually have that problem in New York, specifically the city.
Where somebody goes and grabs all the ballots. And
Los Angeles.
And fills them out.
And the other one that I've seen was San Diego. California and New York, basically.
Yeah.
Maine, it doesn't happen often because they don't need to. Go figure. I actually looked into that earlier this year. So my problem is there's loopholes there. At the time for Trump, he was under legitimate theory that he lost because they stole it from him. I think they stole it. I don't think they actually stole it. I'm going to clarify my position so that we're on the same page. I don't think it was actually stolen.
Now I want to go back to mail-in ballots for a second.
Go ahead.
I just distinctly remember a very large Republican state making sure that there weren't any drop boxes in very populated areas. that were Democrat. Very effectively doing
Yeah,
that in
that
Texas.
wouldn't surprise me.
So voter fraud from a government level, as far as I'm concerned, you should make it. There is only one. There is only one party who's trying to make it more difficult to vote, and that
here's the thing. I don't look at that.
I believe that is voter fraud.
I don't look at that as more difficult to vote. An open drop box without attendance isn't a secure way to vote.
Well, I don't know.
It's a lock, if it's a mechanical lock, if it's a digital lock, like it does, if you do not have a person,
somebody could steal it
on that box. It's not a secure way to vote.
That isn't how they regulated it. They just said you could only have like one per county or something.
Sure.
They limited the amount per county, which means that in rural areas, you have a lot more per person, and in city areas where you have more Democrats, you have a lot less per person. It was a targeted
I don't
law.
know that the per person matters.
It was a targeted law.
My point is, how does the count per person matter?
The difficulty of getting to it, and
but that's not the number per person. That's not the count per person, because as long as it's all in the same spot, or if it's at a post office or at the county court or at a central location,
it matters. It matters if you only have one in Houston and one in Abilene.
I don't know why it would matter if you only had one in Houston. Everybody can still get to it. Like, that's the thing. I don't see that
that's everybody who has access to easy transportation.
Transit. Yeah, but if you're talking easy transport, well, hold on. If you're talking easy transportation,
does it make it more or less convenient to vote to take away all the ballot boxes?
It would. Are they taking away all of them, or just limiting them to one?
Effectively.
I'm not sure.
Does it make it more or less convenient to vote?
I'm not sure it matters. During the window, you're not going to drive by it? Depends on traffic patterns.
If red states didn't have ballot boxes and blue states did, wouldn't matter to you?
Is that the only way to do a mail-in ballot?
Well, there was always other ways to do it, but the boxes is the most secure method. You put it in there and a poll collector picks it up.
So what's the other method? Sending it directly to the Secretary of State's office?
Sending it through the mail.
So using the postal
service. So I think when we do it, we did it.
And you're not paying for postage, right?
No, we always had to pay for postage. In Washington, we did anyway. The county clerk didn't pay for the postage.
So I have no problem with limiting or even removing ballot boxes if postage is free.
Yeah, and in Washington it wasn't. At least in our county.
Now, if you're limiting ballot boxes and postage isn't free, there I have a problem.
Yeah.
Because that doesn't make any sense. Because if you can get to the ballot box that's usually at a town office or a county office, you can get to the post office.
You're usually in front of the little town halls or whatever.
Right? So that is the same level of convenience. If you have to pay for postage for a ballot?
Yeah, it was just a matter of budgeting for the election.
It was Washington, right?
Yeah, it's kind of wild, isn't it? And it was a 100%.
How did you live there?
We really like the absentee. We really like the absentee voter.
I mean, I like the idea of Washington, but every time I listen to somebody who's been there, I'm like, no.
You know what was really cool about that is the League of Women Voters sent out this amazing voter guide, where both candidates get to make a statement and rebut the statement made by the other candidate. And then they get to send in a write-up about themselves and all this stuff. And then you get the same for all the position stuff, referendums and whatever else. And all of it's in there. And you just open it up and you read it. And
both positions?
Yeah.
Both sides?
And in their words. They don't edit it. They just send it out.
I like it.
And you fill out your ballot.
It's a pack, right?
For as long as you want. At your kitchen table, discussing it with your wife.
So here's the thing.
It was an amazing way to vote.
I am totally in favor of digitized voting. Take your IRS ID.
I am not.
I am.
Because that one is really easy to corrupt.
IRS ID. Everything's tied to your tax record. Have to have a secure way to pay our taxes.
is actually one that scares me.
It's coming.
Only in person, and only if I can take a printout home with me, with the unique code on it.
Screw that. Right on my phone, PDF.
The paper copy.
So print it.
Is an artifact.
Yeah.
No. But print it at, or
it's not any different.
Or when the vote is done, when I send my vote over to my county precinct, a piece of paper is printed off with my vote. And it doesn't matter. It could be on a QR code for all I care. Well, it couldn't be on a QR code because that's a target. But you could put the information in as small of a chunk as you want. It could be microdots, right? It doesn't matter. It's a physical artifact.
Yeah. PDF. Then you can print it if you want it. Same thing.
Every vote, every person.
Yeah.
On a piece of paper that anybody from the country can come and grab a box of and count it at any time. Sure. Is the only way to do a secure vote. So I'm for the electronic vote. But what I want if I do an electronic vote is to look at the piece of paper that I just did that on and slip it into a secure box.
Nope.
That's what I want.
I want no people involved in the process whatsoever.
No person has to be there. Secure box. The trouble is the people from the outside can get in.
Not if you do it right.
Know enough about computer security to know that there's always a way.
No, there isn't.
And it can
be. There's not always a way. There is a way to harden it.
And there'll be somebody there trying to program a backdoor.
The only problem I have, the only problem that I have with that process, is if it was done privately. The technology that would be implemented would have to be open source, so everybody can see the tech. It'd have to be key verified, so that it can't be modified.
So you're talking blockchain or something like that?
No, because blockchain's not that useful for. Blockchain is useful if you want to distribute the security, so that you distribute it between like towns. So towns have each have their own block, basically. That you could do that.
What I want is to make it so one person can't change the votes all the way across the country because they have access to the technology to do it.
You could make it so they couldn't.
A piece of paper that has been printed off and examined by the voter and verified to be real is a piece of paper. It's an artifact. I can't go in on a computer and change it. The trust for the vote will not happen with a purely electronic system.
We trust the banking system.
We can verify what we know is going on with our transactions.
Sure.
You can't verify your transaction. It's anonymous after it hits. My transaction is anonymous after I put it in this whole box.
It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be anonymous to you.
It should be.
No. It doesn't have to be anonymous to you.
But if it's not anonymous to me, then it can be not anonymous to somebody else.
That's not true. One-way hashes cannot be reversed.
Yeah, if I have a number that I can go look up, and I have to be able to keep that number. But that still puts the onus on each individual person, where you can put it in systemically.
I mean, anonymous voting. This is the thing that I don't get. Anonymous voting is kind of, when you're talking about individual referendums, maybe that makes sense in some way. But like I said, I have a tool that can tell me if my neighbor is Republican or Democrat. I know
and
roughly
whether
how
they
you
voted.
And whether they voted.
Yeah.
So I roughly know how you voted in the last X number of elections.
Yeah, and I don't like the party registration system. There's a couple of reasons I don't like it. Mm-hmm. That's actually the least one of the reasons I don't like it, but I don't like it.
You could actually have a much more private system electronically. Because what you could do is you could tie an individual's identity to a hash that they can calculate, but they can't recall. You put your information in, it calculates the hash. That's the only way to see it. The hash is the only thing that's stored for the reference, and then how they voted.
I love a lot about electronic voting. I want it to produce an artifact.
Unfortunately, I'm having a hard time disagreeing with you about the artifact part. So I haven't said
It's just hard to Because
anyway,
just one person with access to the back door can change the results.
That's why it would have to be open source. So you couldn't do that.
Because everybody would be able to see it if you did.
Yeah. So you couldn't do that. The system would have to be transparent.
Which is why I brought up blockchain, and I'm sure there's other things that do that. But everybody sees blockchain.
Yeah, kind of. Blockchain's not as secure as people assume. Well, not as anonymous as people assume. Let's go that way. Technically, it's secure as it can be.
Yeah.
But you still have to secure your key, which these make really great keys. So do Androids, unfortunately. I have to give them that.
Yeah.
That's how I would do it. I might agree that you do it in person with this as your key. And you have the artifacts, so you have both, the best of both. But
and to be able to look at it and say, this is, in fact, what I did, and then drop it in a box.
Because
and then you just have to trust.
The problem that I have with the current system is there's like 3 companies that maintain the electronic ballot systems.
We have a whole television show about a president who,
Anyway, that's Shut Up, Justin.
Shut up, Justin.
And I have an appointment. So we are done for the night.
You do. That's right. You have to say.
You know,
speaking of politics,
you beat me on something. Good job.
I am so proud of myself right now.
I got my ass kicked.
I beat you all the time. You just never admit it.
I will admit you schooled me on the Keystone Pipeline. I did not have a rebuttal for that.